This is the Polar Star. She's America's only heavy icebreaker capable of reaching Antarctica. Look at the channel stretching out behind her. This is just the first stretch of a corridor more than 70 miles long that she has to carve through solid ice. Right now, a fuel tanker carrying millions of gallons of diesel is waiting. If the Polar Star can't break through and escort that tanker to McMurdo Station, 1,000 people will start rationing heat in the coldest place on Earth. That tanker is sitting at the edge of the Ross Sea ice shelf. Engines idling, crew watching the icebreaker work. Every hour the channel stays closed is an hour closer to the weather window slamming shut. Watch the bow as it crashes through the ice. You'll notice something different. It's not shaped like a knife the way most ships are built. Instead, it slopes upward like a shallow ramp, angled at about 30 degrees from horizontal. That angle is everything. When the ship drives forward, the bow doesn't try to cut through ice horizontally. It rides up onto the surface like a truck driving onto a loading dock. Forward momentum becomes upward climb. And once the bow is up, gravity does the rest. Here's why that works. The Polar Star's propellers generate 75,000 shaft horsepower. That power translates to roughly 400 tons of forward thrust. When that thrust hits the 30-degree ramp of the bow, about half converts to vertical force. Now you have 200 tons pushing the ship upward onto ice that's already under stress from supporting 13,000 tons of steel. But the ice doesn't bend. Multi-year pack ice is too rigid, too compressed. So it fractures. Explosive cracks radiate outward as pressure spikes past 300 psi. That's 10 times the pressure inside a car tire, concentrated on a few square feet of frozen ocean. But when that bow comes crashing down, it has to survive those same forces. At 20 below zero Fahrenheit, standard. Steel stops behaving like steel. Metal atoms vibrate constantly, and that vibration is what lets steel flex under stress. As temperature drops, the atoms vibrate less. Below -20, regular steel plate becomes brittle. It doesn't bend, it snaps. The Polar Star solves this with microalloying. Instead of pure iron and carbon, her hull steel contains tiny amounts of nickel, chromium, and manganese. Less than 5% total. These atoms wedge themselves into the gaps between iron atoms in the crystal lattice. When stress hits the metal, instead of fracturing along a clean line, the energy scatters across millions of tiny deflections. Each alloying atom acts like a microscopic shock absorber, forcing any crack to zigzag instead of running straight. That's how a 2-inch thick hull survives 10,000 impacts per deployment without failing. The channel grows slowly, a few dozen feet with each impact. Behind the Polar Star, broken ice tumbles into the wake as brash, churned-up slurry the tanker can push through once the path is clear. But the clock is already running out. At 22 below zero, open seawater loses heat fast. New ice starts forming within hours. Wait too long and that 70-mile channel becomes 70 miles of fresh obstacle. The tanker will follow a few hours behind, close enough to transit before the channel refreezes, far enough away to stay clear while the Polar Star works. But right now, somewhere below the waterline, 75,000 horsepower of machinery is fighting a battle measured in thousandths of an inch. And the equipment is starting to complain. Below the main deck, the engineering spaces feel like a different planet. Outside air sits at 22 below zero. Inside the engine room, it's pushing 105 degrees Fahrenheit, a 127-degree swing across a few inches of steel. The heat comes from the diesel-electric plant. Massive engines the size of school buses spin, generators that could power a small town. But here's the thing most people don't realize. Those engines aren't connected to the propellers at all. On a conventional ship, the engine connects to the propeller through a gearbox. Metal gears mesh together, spinning at over 1,000 RPM, transferring power mechanically from combustion to thrust. That works fine in open water, where the propeller meets consistent resistance. But ice changes everything. Imagine the propeller blade spinning through slush, meeting almost no resistance when suddenly it hits a chunk of multi-year ice dense as concrete. The blade stops, but the engine doesn't know that yet. It's still trying to spin at 1,800 RPM. All that rotational energy, tens of thousands of foot-pounds of torque, has to go somewhere. In a direct drive system, it goes backward through the gears. Best case, you shear teeth off the gearbox. Worst case, you snap the propeller shaft, and now you're drifting in a frozen ocean with no propulsion. The Polar Star solves this by breaking the mechanical connection completely. The diesel engines spin generators instead of propellers. Those generators produce electricity, about 75,000 horsepower worth, running through cables as thick as a man's arm. That electricity flows to motors mounted directly on the propeller shafts. This matters because electricity can be controlled in milliseconds. Watch the shaft RPM gauge during ice-breaking operations. You'll see it swinging like a metronome on fast forward. One moment the prop is spinning at 150 RPM through slush. The next second it hits solid ice and drops to 60. Then it breaks through and climbs back to 140. Those swings represent torque spikes that would destroy a mechanical drivetrain. But this is far from the only different piece of engineering down here. When the icebreaker is having a tough time crashing through thick ice, the bow rides up. The ice doesn't break. And now the ship is stuck. The hull frozen in place, propellers churning uselessly. This is where the healing system earns its reputation. Deep in the hull, massive tanks run along both sides of the ship. Pumps can move 100,000 gallons of seawater from port to starboard in under a minute. As the water shifts, the ship rolls 5 degrees. Then 10, enough to break the friction seal between the hull and the ice. The rocking motion cracks the grip, and suddenly the props find purchase again. From the bridge, it feels like controlled chaos, but it works. It's worked for decades. But right now, a shaft seal warning light on the main board suggests the ship might need every trick it has before this mission ends. And this annual trip is a long one that pushes the crew and the ship's ability to support them to their limits. The ship carries 155 crew members and up to 35 scientists. 190 people who need to eat, sleep, breathe, and stay warm for months at a stretch. That means 600 meals per day coming out of a galley the size of a studio apartment. It means 40,000 gallons of fresh water produced weekly. Because there's no port within 1,000 miles. That water comes from the ocean itself. The ship runs reverse osmosis units that force seawater through membranes at 800 psi, enough pressure to push water molecules through while leaving salt behind. It takes serious energy. Each gallon of fresh water costs electricity the diesel generators have to produce, which means burning fuel that the ship can't replace until it reaches port. Everything connects. Power, water, food, heat, every system depends on every other system. And 190 lives depend on all of them. Berthing spaces are tight, racks stacked 3 high, 8 to 12 sailors per compartment, personal space reduced to a bunk and a coffin-sized locker. Privacy doesn't exist. You learn to sleep. Through engine noise, hull impacts, the 1MC. That's the ship's main intercom that reaches every compartment, and the guy in the next rack snoring. Or you don't learn, and you stop sleeping. Either way, the watch schedule doesn't care. Watches are how a ship never stops running. The crew divides into rotating shifts. 4 hours on duty, 8 hours off. Cycling through a rhythm that ignores whether the sun is up or not. In an Antarctic summer, the sun doesn't set for months. Your body never adjusts. You just keep rotating, eating breakfast at midnight, standing bridge watch at 4 in the morning, sleeping whenever the schedule says you can. Because operating this ship safely takes an extreme amount of focus. Watch the bridge during ice-breaking operations. You'll see a team working in focused silence. The conning officer, whoever has control of the ship's movement at that moment, calls speed and heading adjustments. The helmsman responds instantly, making small corrections that keep the bow aligned with weak points in the ice. Next to the helmsman stands the lee helmsman, who translates engine commands into throttle positions. That might seem redundant, until you realize the helmsman's hands are on the wheel and eyes are on the ice. They can't also be adjusting throttle levers, but the most important person on the bridge isn't wearing a uniform. The ice pilot reads the surface like a language. Darker ice usually means thinner, less snow on top, more light penetrating. Fresh cracks are weak points. Pressure ridges cast shadows that reveal height. The pilot vectors the ship toward vulnerabilities, not just straight ahead. A good ice pilot saves hours. A great one saves the hull. The learning curve for junior officers is steep, because a ship this size responds slowly. Give a rudder command now, and the bow won't start swinging for 30 seconds. What you do in this moment affects what happens half a minute from now. Anticipation matters more than reaction. One wrong call, one approach at the wrong angle, and the ship can sluice sideways into ice that traps the hull before anyone can correct. Off-watch hours disappear into maintenance, training, and sleep that never feels like enough. Recreation means a cramped gym, a TV lounge with DVDs everyone's seen twice, card games on the mess decks. Email works when satellite coverage allows. Letters from home arrive in batches, usually weeks delayed, sometimes months. The isolation compounds. By month 3, the crew operates on muscle memory, grinding through days that blur together until the ice finally opens into clear water. But some days don't blur. Some days the alarm goes off at 3 in the morning and everything changes in seconds. The most dangerous thing on a ship isn't the ice outside, it's fire inside. The hull doesn't burn, but everything within it does. A fire in a sealed compartment generates toxic smoke in seconds. Within minutes, temperatures can reach 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit as superheated gases accumulate near the overhead. Firefighters call this flashover, when everything in the space ignites simultaneously. In polar waters, the crew handles it alone, or nobody does. Every sailor qualifies in basic damage control before leaving port. Firefighting, pipe patching, flood response, electrical isolation. Drills run weekly, and they're designed to hurt. Alarms at all hours. Compartments filled with simulated smoke. Look inside a damage control locker. You'll see gear staged for every scenario. Firefighting suits, breathing apparatuses, pipe patches, wooden plugs, simple equipment. Because simple works when your hands are shaking and visibility is zero. Engine room fires get CO2 flooding. The gas displaces oxygen and smothers combustion in seconds, but it also smothers people. Anyone still inside when that system activates has 60 seconds to get out. Flooding is the other nightmare. A crack below the waterline lets the ocean in at pressures that jet, not trickle. The real defense is compartmentalization. Watertight doors that seal against knife-edge frames using rubber gaskets and lever arms called dogs. A properly dogged door holds pressure that would blow a regular door apart. But closing it means accepting that anyone still inside isn't coming out. That decision happens in seconds. The shaft seal leak right now isn't catastrophic. But it's not nothing either. Engineers have rigged portable pumps and set 30-minute inspections. In 12 hours, divers can go down. Until then, everyone watches the gauges. The ship stops in a clearing between ice ridges. Propulsion goes offline. Engineers lock the shaft with physical clamps so rotation is impossible, because what comes next puts divers within arm's reach of machinery that could kill in a fraction of a second if it moved unexpectedly. Only when the shaft is secured do the divers suit up. Under ice diving is one of the most dangerous evolutions in the Coast Guard. The divers wear dry suits rated for 28-degree water, full-face masks with integrated communications, gloves thick enough to resist cold but thin enough to grip tools. Each diver trails a tether back to the dive hole, a yellow line that's their only connection to the surface. Lose that line, get swept under the shelf by current, and there's no rescue coming. The ice extends 70 miles in every direction. The seafloor is 1,500 feet down, nearly a third of a mile of black water below. If something goes wrong, there's nowhere to go. Next to the diver, you'll see a metal frame descending on cables. That's the dive stage. It carries everything the divers need. Tool baskets, spare air bottles, underwater lights, and the patch kit for the seal repair. Divers can't carry this gear themselves. The bulk makes maneuvering impossible in current, and dropping a tool means watching it tumble a third of a mile to the seafloor. The stage stays at working depth, tethered from above, giving the divers a fixed reference point in water where there's no up or down without watching your bubbles. The shaft seal sits where rotating metal meets static hull, a boundary that tolerates thousands of RPM while the structure around it flexes with every impact. The seal maintains a gap measured in thousandths of an inch, too tight, and friction generates enough heat to score the bearing surface. too loose and seawater finds a path inward. Ice impacts knock that alignment off by millimeters, and millimeters are all it takes. The divers approach with the shaft locked and silent. They carry a composite patch clamp, a gasket designed to deform under pressure and seat against the housing. Positioning is everything. Too much torque on the bolts crushes the existing seal and makes the leak worse. Too little, and the patch doesn't seat. They work by feel. Fingers numbing inside gloves, communicating topside in short bursts. The patch seats. Bolts tighten in sequence, a pattern that distributes load evenly around the circumference. The flow meter topside shows water intrusion dropping. It's not a permanent fix. The ship has maybe 200 operational hours before the patch degrades, but 200 hours is enough to finish the channel, escort the tanker through, and reach open water where a proper repair can happen. But escorting the tanker isn't the only mission this icebreaker is carrying out. Throughout the ship, there are 5 laboratories that can support research teams for months. Oceanographers, climate scientists, biologists, all of them using access that no other platform on Earth can provide. Cranes lower instruments through holes cut in the ice. The workhorse is the CTD Rosette, a frame shaped like a carousel about 6 feet tall holding a ring of sample bottles around a central sensor package. CTD stands for conductivity, temperature and depth. The rosette shape lets technicians trigger individual bottles at specific depths, capturing water samples from different layers of the ocean. Watch the data feed in real time. You'll see temperature and salinity graphing as the probe descends. Distinct layers appearing where warm water meets cold, where fresh glacial melt sits atop denser brine. These profiles reveal how polar oceans circulate, where heat moves between layers, how currents carry water masses around the continent. One vertical cast can contain more information about ocean dynamics than months of satellite observation. Ice cores tell an older story. Drills extract cylinders of frozen seawater and snow. And trapped in that ice are bubbles of ancient atmosphere. The bubbles contain air from the moment the snow sealed. Oxygen ratios, carbon dioxide concentrations, methane levels, trace particles, all preserved like time capsules. Antarctic ice cores have retrieved bubbles from 800,000 years ago. That's atmosphere from before modern humans existed, trapped in frozen ocean, now telling scientists what the climate used to be. A single core pulled from the right location can extend the climate record further back than any instrument ever built. Inside the ship, the labs fight constant challenges. Vibration from ice-breaking rattles sensitive equipment off calibration. Temperature swings stress electronics. Humidity spikes when hatches open to the cold and plummets when heating systems run full. The science teams compensate with isolation mounts, climate control cabinets, redundant measurements. Data that took days to collect can corrupt in seconds if a freezer loses power or a sample warms past its threshold. However, all of this is secondary once that channel is open, because right now a tanker carrying 5 million gallons of diesel is waiting for the signal to proceed. At McMurdo, crews have spent weeks preparing for this moment. The station sits on volcanic rock, but the fuel pier is made of ice, a frozen dock that extends into the Sound, thick enough to support heavy equipment, reinforced with seawater pumped over the surface and allowed to freeze in layers. The ice pier can handle hundreds of tons of cargo. It regrows every winter and gets bulldozed every summer. It's the only way to unload a ship at a station that has no harbour. When the tanker arrives, fuel lines connect the ship's tanks to the station's storage depot. Pumps push diesel at 500 gallons per minute, a transfer that will take the better part of 2 days. While fuel flows, cargo operations run parallel. Cranes lift containers from the tanker's deck, food supplies for the winter crew, scientific equipment for next year's research season, construction materials, medical supplies, spare parts for vehicles that can't be fixed with what's already on station. The icebreaker stands off, monitoring the channel for shifts. Ice is never static. Currents push. Wind shoves. A channel that was open yesterday can close tomorrow if the flows decide to move. The ship stays ready, props idling, prepared to break new leads if the tanker's exit path starts narrowing. After 72 hours, the transfer completes. 2 million gallons of diesel now sit in McMurdo's storage tanks, enough to heat the station, power the generators, and run the vehicles for another year. The tanker backs out of the ice pier and begins its return transit. The icebreaker escorts it to the shelf edge, then peels off north. Mission complete.